This is an old sculpture I did quite a while back, which I've updated to make it look a bit more realistic. I cast the wax of it and then modified it with oil-based clay. I've also changed the position of the head. Here I'm creating a plane of clay around the sculpture that will form a parting line in the mould. I'm creating a nice clean edge between the sculpture and the clay. The neater I can do this, the less cleanup there will be on the wax pattern. I'm putting in little dimples. The silicone will flow into these dimples and produce little bumps on the mould. This will then interlock with the silicone on the other side of the mould. Here I'm creating a secondary clay wall that's perpendicular to the first clay wall. This is just to keep the silicone in place and stop it flowing off the side. This is a silicone which is silicone rubber which has a hardener. Just measure it out in the correct ratios. The hardener has a blue dye in it, so you can see when it's mixed properly. Okay, just spread the silicone all over the surface. It constantly runs off. Just have to keep pushing it back up onto the sculpture. I'm going to pour most of it off and just leave a thin layer on, and then I'll thicken up the rest of it, and then I'll pour the thickened layer on, which will sort of hold it all in place. The important thing at this stage is just to make sure there's no bubbles. There's no trap bubbles against the surface of the sculpture, and the silicone has actually got into every little nook and cranny. So I forgot to film you, but you can see this thickened now. I've tipped some off and I've thickened the rest of it up with a thick thickener, and now I'm applying the thickener over the sculpture, and that should stay in place then. As long as there's a thinner layer trapped beneath, there shouldn't be any bubbles on the surface. I seem to remember I'd made up another batch here, another smaller batch, because I didn't have enough of the thickened stuff to completely cover the surface. So I've made up another thickened batch just to finish off, making sure that all the surface has been covered to a sufficient thickness. Okay, the silicone is now set. Next part is to remove the clay wall, and then I can trim the silicone to make it look a bit neater. And now trimming off all the edges.
A bad thing to keep your air clean. If you're a miniature hobbyist spraying with non-toxic acrylic, spraying for maybe 10 to 20 minutes per session, not having one will not be a problem. My solution acrylics, you don't have to fit the pen down. And because I'm a lazy person and I want things to go fast and I want it to be easy.
Just tidying up the clay wall again, because the next stage will be plaster poured onto this to create a mother mould. The mother mould is just it's made of plaster of Paris, and it's rigid, and it will basically just hold the silicone part of the mould stable without it moving around.
People have previously said mix the paints to a consistency of skimmed milk, but let's be honest here, 99%.
Again, I put another wall just to stop the plaster from flowing over the sides, and I've also put more dimples in again to create little bumps once the clay is removed, and those little bumps will then interlock with the plaster on the other side. This is very old plaster, and it sets up within a minute or so, so I have to be really quick here. Just by wiggling the spoon about on the plaster, it kind of liquefies it a bit, and then it can flow neatly into all the little crevices and dimples. Just smoothing out with the fingers, just to make it look a bit neater. And then once that's set, I can remove the rest of the clay, and that will then give me access to the other side of the sculpture, and also a nice flat surface around it on which to cast the next part of the mould. This process of mould making is very time consuming, but it does give a really nice clean mould. And so I'm just picking out clay that's stuck in the crevices. What I'll also do here, which you won't see, is that I will then just wash it under the tap and just get a soft brushed toothbrush just to brush any all the rest of the clay out. So the oil-based clay will remain intact, but you can then use a toothbrush and water to just wash out the water-based clay, and then it will give a nice clean finish. Okay, what I'm doing here, I'm just attaching a pouring cup to the sculpture. This will create an opening in the mould in which to actually pour the wax. So I'm just attaching this to a part which isn't going to be visible, so it's not going to be spoiling any detail of the sculpture. And this is going to be stuck right onto her butt. Again, I'm now building another clay wall, just to, again, as in the other side, just to hold the silicone back, stop the silicone flowing off the side. You can see I haven't covered the, I've just built a clay wall up to the pouring cup. So I'm doing this part in two pieces. There's going to be 2 more pieces of silicone making up this mould. Having 3 parts to the mould will enable me to remove the mould from the wax pattern much more easily. Again, same process for the silicone, just mixing it up with the hardener. So I've done all that, trimmed it. I haven't shown that in the video. And now I'm making up the plaster for the second part of the mother mould. So again, this will then be poured over the silicone. Once this is done, I'll shape it, and that will be the second part of the mould complete.
Walking up and down this narrow street. From what I read, this road basically connects the lower part of Basel to shoot with. But that wraps up our time here. I feel like we reached the end. There may be no escape from this area. We're stuck here forever. Open space where you can just sit down and just think. Ich bin jetzt hier im Dreispitzareal, auf jeden Fall eine komplett andere Gegend, super. Ich glaube, ich habe ein paar coole Shots gesammelt. Dann glaube ich, habe ich die Challenge für heute echt ganz gut erfüllt und ich bin sehr gespannt, was Aaron berichtet. So, Chris, check the task of freaking. There's still quite a lot of light around, so it's not too dark, which is good.
As I said, this is old plaster and I don't have much time to sort of shape it, so it's solidified now, but it's still soft enough that I can actually scrape it with a razor. This is all cosmetic stuff, obviously I don't have to do this, but I just like a nice neat looking mould. Okay, there's the 2 parts of the mould so far, and you can see where the 3rd part is going to have to go. And also making that area a little bit thicker because it was a bit thin. That plaster isn't very strong there in that area. I've just tried a different technique here. Instead of just pouring the silicone in, because it's such an odd shape, it'd be difficult to keep the silicone in place. So what I've decided to do is add some clay onto the sculpture, and then I'll put the plaster on top, forming the mother mould, and then I'll remove the mother mould, and then I'll remove the clay, and then I'll create a gap then between the mother mould and the sculpture, and then I can actually pour the silicone in to that gap. It'll save me then just trying to push the silicone back up onto the sculpture. Okay, so I've taken that off. You can see I've broken another bit off. It wasn't very strong. So there's the two bits. You can see where it broke. So I'm going to modify this a bit and strengthen it up. So I've got the three parts of the mother mould. There's two parts of the silicone mould inside, and now I'm going to pour in the third part of the silicone mould. It's going to basically fill the gap that's left when I remove the clay. Didn't quite have enough, so I've had to make up a little bit more. And all complete. I didn't show the final process of opening it up and cleaning up the mould, but there's the three parts of the silicone mould and three parts of the mother mould. Just putting it back together after cleaning it up. And it's now ready to pour. Don't forget to check out part 2 of this bronze casting video by the lost wax process.